Good morning. Today is the 26th day of the second Adar and the 5th of April. We're up to the 6th reading today, actually, but we're going to talk about the 7th. The 7th has a very interesting verse. And this verse has a lot of discussion in what's called, we've mentioned this before, the Masorah. Masorah is the various notes collected over the millennia on the Torah text, and these notes usually have to do with how many times a word appears, where it appears, in what context, but also special phenomena in the Torah scroll are also noted and their meaning. So in the 7th reading, Leviticus 11:42, we find the following. I'm going to read it in Hebrew first, and then we'll do the English and explain something about this. כל הולך על גחון וכל הולך על ארבע, עד כל מרבה רגליים לכל השרץ השורץ על הארץ, לא תאכלום כי שקט הם. Says the Torah, among all crawling creatures that crawl on the ground, you may not eat the snake. Doesn't mention the snake in the Hebrew, but that's the context, who moves about bent over, and any creature that walks on four, any creature including any that has many legs, for they must be considered loathsome. The word that crawls on its belly, among all crawling creatures, crawling here means, and in the translation for some reason, I don't know why he took the word belly out, but that's the main word here, gachon. Gachon means its belly. So any creature that crawls on its belly may not be eaten. The word belly, gachon, in the Torah scroll is written with a major vav. A major vav means that the letter vav in gachon is spelled gimel chet vav nun. So the letter vav in it, the third letter, is written in large script. It's written much larger than would be normally written. Unfortunately, I don't have, you know what I do have? I should be able to find a good picture of what this big vav looks like. Even though it's not instrumental to what we're doing, but would be nice to see it. So, I don't know if you can see it here. But this is as close as I can bring it, and it still wouldn't make any sense. I don't know if you can see this vav here. So it's much bigger than the usual. What is this? Why is there a large vav there? The Masorah says that this is the middle of the Torah in letters. In other words, if I would count all the letters of the Torah, I would have theoretically a odd number, and this vav would be the midpoint of that odd number. As it turns out, there's something like 200,000, but I think it's actually an even number, so there's no real middle. So this is very, and anyway, it's not even close. It's off by at least, a few hundred letters. So this was always a very big mystery. Why the Masorah, why the sages of past millennia would write this? What was the idea behind this? Obviously, this big vav means something. They wasn't just trying to send us on a wild goose chase. The solution to this and many other such Masoretic notes was provided by a genius 100 years ago, about 120 years ago, who wrote a beautiful book called Ahavat Torah, the love of Torah. And he basically solved many of these Masoretic notes and explained what they mean And his explanation for this one is very surprising. He says that this is the middle strange letter, meaning of the major letters, this one is the middle. And that turns out to be true, meaning there's a number of major letters scattered throughout the Torah. There is an odd number of them, and this happens to be the middle one. So that's a very elegant and beautiful solution to this question. But I want to read what the sages originally said about this, because when we read what they said, we'll see that this is not what they meant. So the Talmud, we're talking about in Kedushin 30a, they write like this: the first sages, meaning the early sages, were called those who count. They were called Sofrim. Sofrim means those who count, because it would count all the letters in the Torah. As they would say that the letter Vav in the word belly is the midpoint of the letters in a Torah scroll. So again, so this genius, what he did was, his name was Pinchas Halevi Horowitz, he decided that it's talking about major letters, and then it solves the problem. However, it's probably not so simple, because immediately the Talmud continues similarly in the expression, the boar out of the wood. A boar is a type of swine. Ravages it. The ayin in the word wood is the midpoint of Psalms. Now, in Psalms, we don't know how to do the same trick that he did with the Torah, to count all the large and major letters and say that the chazir miyar, the swine or the boar out of the wood, or the wood boar, if you would call it like that the ayin there is the middle large letter. What is this all about? What is this talking about? So, again, technically it's very hard to understand exactly what the sages wanted, but there's a very different type of solution that was provided by Rav Ginsburg, which gives us a completely different direction. So we said that the belly is of the snake. He's the one that's traveling on his belly, and that's where the Vav appears. The boar is a pig, and this is some kind of wild pig that lives in the woods. So the word wood, Ya'ar, has a large ayin. So it's talking about the snake and the boar. What is this all about? So what can we say? So first of all, the book of Psalms is divided into 5 books traditionally. Won't get into exactly how, the 5 different books. The reason for this division is because the sages tell us that King David wrote his book as a complement to the 5 books of Moses. There's a number of different acronyms for the word Adam, Adam being a man. One of them that's more famous is Adam, David, Mashiach, the 3 generations of Messiah, Adam, David, and Messiah. But there's another one that says it's Adam, David, Moshe, that it's Adam, David, and Moshe. And it's actually very common for people to be called David Moshe or Moshe David. These 2 names go together. If you've taken any of our courses in psychology, especially the one titled Understanding and Rectifying the Ego, the introduction, that's on thenefesh.org, thenefesh.org, you'll see that the 2 main characters are Moses and David, Moshe and David. Why is this? Because Moses taught us self-nullification, and David taught us lowliness. These are the 2 most important faculties of our soul with which we can navigate the ups and downs of life. The ups of life cause us to feel haughty. They cause us to have a sense that we have completed our mission. We're satisfied. We feel that we have achieved, we've accomplished. Moses teaches us self-nullification, which means that even in those places where you feel accomplished, you should actually take on more of God's yoke. and be more dedicated to reality. Not to feel that you're flying high, but rather to come back down with this accomplishment and be able to accomplish more. David teaches us that when you reach life's low points, and he was a master of this, in life's low points you need to be lifted up. And what lifts you up, surprisingly, is lowliness, shiftless. And why this is and how exactly this works is the topic of these courses and everything we talk about. So let us just mention today that what did the snake propose to Adam and Eve? He proposed before them, V'item kelokim yodei tov v'ra. You shall be like God, knowing good and evil. He proposed to them to be prideful, to be so prideful that they could be like God, knowing good and evil. They should be prideful because they know the difference between good and evil by eating from the tree of knowledge. What does Moses teach us? He rectifies the snake. The middle of the Torah is like saying the essence of Moses' teachings is the rectification of kol holech al gachon, of anyone who, or any animal that travels on its belly, referring to the snake. That's the center point, it's the midpoint, it's the essence of the entire Torah, to teach us how to be in a state of nullification, so that that pride of accomplishment that the snake tried to infuse us with, poison us with, doesn't take over. David, on the other hand, and this is an amazing thought, and I have to admit that this is very surprising to me. Every time I hear it, I'm surprised again. David is dealing with Esau. Esau's symbol is the swine, the pig. Why that is actually in our parsha this week, when it mentions the pig, the sages say that his name in Hebrew is Chazir because he's destined to lachazor, to return. Because as we've talked many times, Esau in the end is Isaac and Rebekah's son. And we're waiting for him to return. However, why is he so distant? What is bugging him? What's his problem? Surprisingly, his problem is not pride. His problem is his sense of meaninglessness, his sense of being downtrodden. He is put down. That's what he feels. He feels that he has no place in the world. And because of that, he lashes out. Because of that, he especially lashes out and is jealous of his brother Jacob. And he's always in a low state, the lowest point of life. And David is the one who rectifies Esau. David is described as red-haired with beautiful eyes. Esau is red-haired as well. David is his rectification. It says that redness is rectified by David. That feeling of being low is rectified by David. That's why the center of the Psalms, which is meant exactly to do this, to give us this rectification, are these words, the boar out of the woods, or the wood boar, the wood swine, the wood pig. David rectifies that. And the way that he rectifies it is by giving us a sense of what's called the rectified lowliness. Lowliness is actually what picks a person up. Lowliness means that I admit to the fact that I am not perfect, that I have all these shortcomings. The more a person is willing to admit before God that he is not as perfect as he thinks, that he has many problems, he is actually lifted up in joy. Lowliness causes and brings about joy. What are the letters? When it comes to Moses, the middle of his book is the letter Vav. The letter Vav, as we've talked about in the past, is a connection. What is he connecting you to? Well, it can be understood as a connection in the sense of connecting us to God. But specifically by Moses, the meaning of this connection is the connection to God's commandments. It's taking upon ourselves the yoke of heaven. The yoke is like a vav also. It looks like a vav as well. What does David do? And that is the sense of self-nullification that allows a person to come back down and not be fooled by the snake's pride, by the poison that he puts into us as pride. The middle of Psalms is this letter Ayin. Ayin, we've also talked about this in the past, about the Aleph and Ayin that interchange, the Aleph being the spiritual side, the letter Ayin being the material side. And comes and says, King David, look at your Ayin. Your Ayin is material. Material Ayin is a sense of lowliness. It's not Ayin that is self-nullification like Moses, which is the Aleph, the non-existent. Rather, this Ayin is like a wellspring. An Ayin also in Hebrew means a wellspring, like Ein Abdolach, the wellspring of crystal. This wellspring is the feeling that you understand that I have not yet achieved the perfect self-nullification I'd like, and therefore I'm in a state of lowliness. How distant am I? This is actually the definition of lowliness in Hasidic thought. A person comes to a sense of loneliness when they realize, when they're willing to admit how distant they are from being in a state of self-nullification, in a state of taking on the yoke of heaven for real. That is where I get my sense of loneliness. That's what it means that I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect, of course. Nobody was created this way. We're not asking someone to be something that they can't. What we're talking about is, given the way that I am, have I taken upon myself the true yoke of heaven? And there I realize that I haven't. When I realize that I haven't, that is my source of loneliness. And so David, every time that he sins, and his big sin is his sin with Bathsheba, he raises his hands up and he says, Chatati LaHashem, I have sinned to God. That is his lowliness. That is the rectification of Esau's feeling of being downtrodden, of being worthless. That is exactly what lifts you up. Again, it's very surprising. You have to hear the whole course. We've talked about it in the past. Hopefully we'll get more opportunities to talk about this. So the center of Moses' book is the Vav of the snake, the rectification of the snake, the rectification of the pride. The center of Psalms is David's Ayin, the source of the downtroddenness of the pig who symbolizes Esau, and lifting that up through lowliness. And so we have this beautiful explanation of why these are the central letters of the Pentateuch and of Psalms, both of which we said have 5 books. And with this we'll end for this week. I hope to see you on Sunday again with a very, very interesting parsha that is always somewhat difficult to comprehend, and hopefully we'll have a lot of beautiful insights into it. Parshat Tazria, where we begin to speak about the so-called leprosy. Thanks for joining. Shabbat Shalom to everyone. All the best.